Good evening and welcome to an intimate conversation with women in politics. Our panelists are three powerful women who are members of Philadelphia City Council. They are Council Member Helen Gim, Council Member Sherelle Parker, and Council Member Catherine Gilmore Richardson. We will also have a few words from our keynote speaker, Senator Pat Spearman. People, you are in for a treat tonight. Our moderator for this conversation is the interim president of PA Dr. Nina Ahmad. Nina recently competed in the 2020 general election for Pennsylvania's Auditor General. She was the first person of color, immigrant, and scientist to become the Democratic nominee for a statewide executive office in the 233-year history of Pennsylvania. She is one of just a few women in Pennsylvania's history, and certainly the only woman of color to ever receive more than 3 million votes statewide. I present to you my now sister, Dr. Nina Ahmad.
Thank you so much. Good evening. It is my pleasure to be the moderator of this part of the evening to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Philadelphia National Organization for Women. Thank you all for joining us today. And for those who contributed but couldn't join us, thank you again. You know, Philadelphia Now is a volunteer-run organization and a labor of love for all of us here. And I am deeply delighted to have Vanessa leading the charge at the Philadelphia chapter of NOW. She's a labor organizer and knows how to rally people, get people together. And the executive board has been a great support and doing a wonderful job. You know, we are known as the conscience of Philadelphia because we say things that other people don't. You know, it is my honor today to introduce, as Vanessa just gave you the names of the people who are here today with us. And we'll start with our keynote speaker, State Senator Pat Spearman of Nevada. She right now will just give a few comments. Later on in the program, there's a full keynote speech from her. So Senator Spearman epitomizes fearlessness. She's an American cleric, so she knows how to give a rousing speech. She's a veteran. She has served us, and so we are safe. And she's a Democratic politician from North Las Vegas, Nevada. She was elected in November 2012 and to the Nevada State Senate, representing the 1st Senate District, and became the first openly lesbian member of the Nevada Legislature. She was re-elected in 2016 and serves as a co-majority whip since then. You will hear her keynote speech, as I said, and she'll join us. She might have to leave because everybody seems to be in session today. Next, I don't know if our council person, Helen Gim, is here yet. I don't see her, but I'll just give her intro. She's another fierce advocate from Philadelphia, serving her 2nd term as city council at large. She leads a human rights agenda, which measures outcomes based on health and well-being of young people. Next, we have with us, there we go. Next, we have with us Council Member Sherelle Parker, who is another fearless advocate whose mission is to bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots. She proudly serves the 9th Council District in Philadelphia. My district actually neighbors her, so she's from the mighty 50th Ward in Philadelphia. She you know, is the majority leader in council and uses her voice to advocate for the passage of much needed public policies that enhance the quality of life for the working class, senior citizens, women, children, and families. And last but not least, we have with us Council Member Catherine Gilmore Richardson, our youngest and newest council member at large. She has already packed in deep experience in her so far short life, working in healthcare, in education, and being chief of staff for former council member Blondell Reynolds Brown. She is committed to the passage of progressive policies effective in advocating for women, children, people of color, and addressing the deep poverty that afflicts Philadelphia. So right now we'll go to Senator Pat Spearman and ask her the first question. And this is a broad question that we have seen in this pandemic. There has been a disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on women and communities of color. Broadly speaking, what needs to change in policy to stop this disparity? And just as an FYI, we have 3 minutes for responses so that we can keep on time. Senator Spearman.
Okay. I'll try not to take all three. I think the first thing that needs to be done to correct that is we have to make sure that more people, especially women, are registered to vote. And we have to make sure that we have more women running for office, or at least people who understand the dilemma that we are in constantly, because the policies will never change until the policy makers change. We've seen over and over and over again, and I say to people all the time, look, I'm done with talking about all of the things that are wrong. I'm done with all of that. Quit talking about it and start being about it. We know what's wrong. Now we need to work on the things that will fix it. And so here in the state legislature, we're working on a number of things that will fix some of the disparities in health, not just for women, but for members of BIPOC communities. So if the policies don't change, we must change the policy makers. And we do that when we vote.
Right. Thank you so much for that really needed response. Everyone should appreciate that, because we have you in the Senate there. We're seeing the advocacy you've done around ERA, and you're so correct that having elected office gives you a podium, and you're able to effectively make good public policy. The next question, I don't see our Councilwoman Gim yet. So I'm going to move on to Councilmember Sherelle Parker. Welcome again. And I was going to ask this question. We have three, you know the questions, we already sent them to you. So I'll ask the second one. Many of the problems we are facing can only be dealt with adequately on a national level. For example, we are not going to get Medicare for all in one city. What are some of the problems you think can be successfully tackled locally?
First, let me just start by saying happy anniversary, right? And thank you all so much for having me. And it's an honor to participate with these dynamic women who are part of this panel today. Let me start by saying, aside from us having a seat at the table, aside from us being committed advocates and activists, one of the things to me that is substantial that I think we are beginning to do much better is to ensure that the providers of the services reflect the people and the communities in need of the services. So it's very much like having a conversation about Black Lives Mattering, and when it comes to issues like civil and social unrest and combating police brutality, it is easy for folks to a certain degree to morally put their fists in the air, shout Black Lives Matter, and say that, yes, it's important, until we start talking about economics and things that matter, like boards, and commissions. So when you want things to change, it's not just those who are elected to public office, but who are we ensuring has a seat at the table on boards and commissions and running departments and governments that control millions and millions of dollars, and ensuring that those providers, particularly Black and Brown providers, get an opportunity to deliver the service, receive the funding, build the capacity, the technical capacity, the skill set, the grant writing, the law departments, the general counsels, the accountants. We have to find a way to do that better, because when we do that, we chip away at gun violence, we chip away at poverty rates, because those people will ensure that Black and Brown brown led organizations, again, which is important, are reaching out to the constituencies that they're serving. It's nothing more frustrating than seeing somebody run an organization to support, let's say, for example, Black men, and you look at who's running the organization and there are no Black men, on the executive team. That is something that we have to do better, and particularly as women.
Thank you so much. And, you actually have been in contact with Dr. Ayla Stanford, right? And that really speaks to someone who saw a need and stepped up, but she could very well, or someone like her, could very well be embedded in our healthcare provider system in Philadelphia. So we would not have all this angst around whether we're being tested, whether we're getting vaccinated, and her confidence that she has given communities has really rallied people to take the vaccine. So maybe you can comment just a minute on that. We have one more minute for you.
Sure, you're absolutely right. I call Dr. Ayla Stanford the Harriet Tubman of COVID-19 testing, and vaccine. And she did it before it became a popular thing to do. But I'll give you an example. Today, there's an article in the paper talking about earmarks, being, coming back to business in Congress. And I am a supporter of earmarks. So Congressman Brendan Boyle has an earmark for the parent company, It Takes Philly, right, that Dr. Stanford is associated with. Congressman Dwight Evans has an earmark proposed to fund the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium. What you saw, Catherine Gilmore, Richardson, myself, and all members of Council President Clark, to be quite frank, what you saw us advocating for, and it should not have come to this, is us jumping up and down saying, don't tell me about, those who are familiar with or who have checked the boxes, to do business as it relates to public health. We are in the midst of a crisis that's disproportionately impacting Black and brown communities. Here's a Black professional, a pediatric surgeon, okay, for that matter, who stood up a model city doing what you can't do because you don't have the credibility to do it. You are not one of the credible voices that the Black community, which has every right in the world to distrust public health as a result of the Tuskegee experiment. You know our history. And the fact that those experts in public health in the city of Philadelphia could not see the value in the very beginning that this entity and Dr. Stanford, this Black medical professional that she could add, that's when having women at the table and other, Black people and people of color to be able to say, wait a minute, we're a voice in that room. I don't care what you think about her, but let me tell you about her being in contact with these Black churches, right? Where Black people are going and where they are trust. So now she's a trusted messenger with a trusted partner. And we bring a certain vision into that room where if we were at that table, I know if Catherine Gilmore Richardson was at that table, I could tell you what would have happened. But it would have been a different outcome and we would not have had to fight in such a way.
And Nina, I have to jump in here to say and follow up.
It is you now anyways.
On our Madam Majority Leader who led the charge on our behalf in council around Dr. Ayla Stanford and supporting the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium. But it's just what she said. It's a community-based, culturally competent model that Dr. Stanford was able to set up with individuals of color who partner with trusted community voices to implement care and service in communities that have long gone without the type of health access and equity needed to really implement the change in health disparities that we are seeing in our communities. And it's really about reimagining and rethinking how our healthcare system operates in its entirety, right? That's what we found out throughout this process through the work of the Black Doctors COVID-19 Consortium. And I would often say that today in Philadelphia, your zip code determines your life expectancy. So we also have to address the underlying causes of health disparities in our city, looking at how structural racism plays a part in, some of the environmental issues we see in our community, some of the environmental pollutants, lack of access to nutritious food or safe recreational spaces. Those are the things that we have to work on to increase or decrease the disparities we see in our communities and increase the probability of those that we are seeking to serve.
Thank you. And just to give you another 2 minutes of your time before we go to Councilmember Helen Kim, as she's here now, I'll ask the follow-up question sort of in the same vein as what are some ways we can support the election of more women in public office? Since you are the most recently elected member here, it might behoove us to learn from you and get your perspective.
Sure. Well, I think it's important first to support women. When women vote, women win. We have to support women who are running for office, not only in word, but in deed. We have to support them financially, right? Because we know that time and time again, you have to ask a woman 7 times to run for office versus her male counterparts. And I remember hearing that in our political class at the campaign school at Yale University. We have to ask women 7 times to run for office versus our male counterparts. And typically when a man runs for office, he calls his old boys and everybody sends in those dollars. So we need that same impact for women running for office, because we know that there are more barriers to entry into elected public service. But on top of that, we have to support women and create the village around women so that we can do the work we are elected to do. Many of us are working moms, and you all know that I say moms get the job done because we do it day in and day out, but we need support. Access to quality, affordable childcare, the opportunity to raise our children and have work-life balance in this industry, but also be able to do everything else that all the other elected officials are doing, which is raising money through their networks and supporting other candidates who are also deserving of positions of leadership and responsibility. And on top of that, and I'll say that I was very proud to do this as a first-term member of council. We have to support women who are seeking leadership positions in our elected body. So that's the type of work we have to do as we seek to elevate women as elected public servants, not only in our city, not only in our Commonwealth, but across the country. We have to support one another.
Absolutely. So thank you for that. And I just want to comment on the note that Senator Spearman put in the chat, money, money, money. That has been my experience. You know, I was the nominee in the primary and spent all my money fighting off 5 other candidates to win the primary. And then when time came for the general, it also depends on what you're running for. My opponent outspent me 2.58 times. And there was and he was a man. And there was no rallying around in a way that could make sure that I got my message out. If we had the money, we would have won that seat, right? And so money is critical given the landscape that we operate in. I would love publicly funded elections. We don't have them yet. We should definitely advocate for them. But while we are here, we have to play the game. And so you're so correct, Senator Spearman, that money is really critical. I want to now move on to our panelist who just came on. I introduced her previously. So here she is, our council member, Helen Kim, a fierce advocate who will fight and be on the front lines of every fight. So we introduced you earlier, Council Member Kim. We had some questions, so I'll give you the question that we saved for you. And it's sort of in the same vein as we've been having. What are the conversations we need to have around allyship that are race, ethnicity, gender identity, class, age, and disability sensitive? How do we stand up and show up for one another in appropriate and authentic ways? And I think because you and I are both people of color, but not Black. And I think it's important that many of us who want to be supportive and be in conversations, because at the end of the day, Black women have borne the brunt of all the oppression. You know, that's just a fact. And so I think we would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you. Nina, first of all, thank you so much for your tremendous leadership and for your wonderful courage and your support of women. Women like myself, women on this panel, women statewide and nationally, and support their movement upward and out. It means a lot. And I think your question is an especially important one as the political field starts to just very little bit starts to diversify and expand and grow. I think one of the most important things is making sure that we have spaces for dialogue. Politics is a strange place. We are thrown together and asked to make a lot of decisions. And sometimes, you know, we obviously come together as colleagues and professionals, but it's hard to carve out spaces where we can become allies together. And trying to figure out and navigate this political world where many men and other types of political forces pit women against one another. I think that's one of the things that is very common. You know, we need to just find time to come together and to figure out how we can navigate some of this work. So I think that's one. Two, I think people say, how do we show up? You show up. I mean, one of the things that, you know, is really amazing about showing up is that you either do it or you don't. And I think a lot of people ask questions about whether you show up for me. And sometimes you need to have conversations with your allies, with friends or with friends of allies to say, hey, you're not showing up in the way that I need you to. And I think especially for women of color who are not Black, it is important for us to hear in a clear way, but in a inclusive way, I need you to do better. That is a conversation that allies have with one another. I need you to do better is not a threat. It's not a criticism. It's not a you know, it's not a pushing back or a pitting against one another. It's asking us to be more articulate about what being, you know, about being a better partner looks like and means. And sometimes it's really hard. We all have really different personalities. We have independent spaces that we've come from. But I do think that when we have honest conversations and say, I need you to do better on this, and I'm here for you if you do, and I need you to know that it hurts me when you don't, is a tough thing. I don't think we have enough space for it, honestly, in our political world. But I would certainly hope that we do more of that. And I think we saw some of that when we were doing a lot of the work around the Stop AAPI hate and some of the hate crimes that we've seen. It's one of the things that we've talked about as being really important, that if we want to talk about how we grow compassion in our world around hate crimes, bias, prejudice, racism, and white supremacy, it's not about, you know, are you showing up for me? You know, it's really about how are we showing up for one another? Because if there's one thing that we know about white supremacy, it's meant to exhaust ourselves, to deplete our compassion, to make people resentful of an expansion, because it's so draining to just deal with white supremacy in general, anti-Blackness in particular. And if we are to grow beyond that, we need to have an ability to tell one another how to do better, and to make space for it.
Thank you for, you know, showing us what solidarity looks like. It is not easy to do, as you said, because many a time people who are people of color, not Black, want to be white adjacent, thinking that their lives will be better as a result, right? So this is where having an education system that really breaks down and tells us from day zero, how is this country operated? What, you know, when they learn about Black Wall Street, most children never hear about it in school. And my children have complained to me about how little time is spent on understanding the economic ways that race has been weaponized against communities of color, particularly the Black community, which has long-lasting effect today. You know, we live in Philadelphia, which is such a diverse city, but such huge pockets of poverty. And when you break that down, that comes from a historical way of making sure people don't have access. And that's when, you know, that's what Councilmember Shirley Parker and Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson have underscored about making sure people who are divvying out that money have that lived experience and know that history. Even people from the Black community have, you know, particularly those who don't have the resources are struggling every day. Who's going to sit and listen and learn and go and Google everything about your own self, right? So people who have the ability to do so must do so. And I thank all of you for having that perspective. You know, we have a few more minutes that I can ask a few more questions. One was to all three council members about what are ways city council members are using their office to disrupt white privilege, white supremacy, and systemic racism. And we'll take a minute each for each of you, and we'll start with Council Member Shirley Parker.
I would say that all council members individually, each of us have our own body of work. But I think when you look at council's body of work together, as a team, as a legislative body, we've done a number of things. I've been extremely intentional about focusing on access to economic opportunities for people to do business. And so for me, it was 3 bills we passed last year regarding the Walter T. Lomax Jr. Transparency in Business Act that will finally, for the first time in history, allow the people of Philadelphia to see who's benefiting from doing business in our city, how much money are they earning, not whether or not they have a sexy mission statement on their website that says Black Lives Matter, but tell us about what your firm looks like. Let's peel back the layers and listen, don't put it in a binder on the shelf in somebody's office. We wanted it housed in a transparent manner on the City of Philadelphia's website so that all the activists who are out there who want to see how corporate America and firms are doing business and building generational wealth, who they are, they get a chance to see it. And what we did was we weaponized the tool of transparency as it relates to those who are doing business with the City of Philadelphia.
Well, thank you. Just before Senator Pat Spearman has to leave, did you want to just say a few words before you leave us for now, and then you'll be back in our next piece?
Oh yeah, gosh, I feel like I've been to church. All of this is good. I just want to say just a couple of things. I put some things in the chat. I think one of the things that we have to do, and I like what the councilwoman just talked about, systemic racism. We know the top level, but we've got to pay attention to those underlying elements that nobody's paying attention to. Here's a question for you. Is it possible to have your mortgage up to date and still lose your home? The answer is yes. If you live in an HOA, a homeowners association, it is possible for your mortgage to be up to date. But if you are delinquent on your HOA dues, you can lose your home. That's one of those things that across the country we've not been paying attention to. And here in Nevada, I had a bill, and unfortunately it didn't get out of our Judiciary Committee, but I had a bill that would rein that in. Last year, during the pandemic, between July and December 31st, in Nevada, 10 people lost their homes because they were delinquent on their HOA dues. Let that sit with you for a minute. 10 people lost their homes because they were delinquent on their HOA dues. Went back and I looked at the distribution of foreclosures, and guess where most of them happened? You are correct, in Black and brown communities. And if you dig down a little deeper, you're also looking at women, single household, right? And so that's a part. HOAs were really started or came back into life in the 1960s to make sure that, quote, those people can't get into our community. And so there's a reason that they call it restricted deeds. That's something we got to look at. we have got to look at that, and we've got to make sure that all across the country, we're asking that question. We're asking that question. Is it possible for your mortgage to be up to date and you still lose your home? And I think when people find that out, there will be more and more people who will be saying, no, you're not going to be able to foreclose on my home because I missed 3 payments on my HOA dues. So that's number one. The other thing that I want to say is I always challenge myself, and I'm going to issue this to my sisters that are here on the panel. Let's look at the agencies. Let's look at the state agencies. Let's look at the agencies that report to the city. Let's look at the agencies that report to the county. How many of us are there? And whenever they have a vacancy to fill, where do they go? Where do they go? If you don't have, I'm going to suggest that you enact a diversity audit, which will require every state agency or every municipal office to show how many of whom they have and what level of influence do they have there. For example, you can have 10 women, but if all of them are in the secretary pool, don't brag to me about that. I need to make sure that women are at the place where the decisions are being made. I need to make sure that women are at the place where the money is being spent. Because when the state budget goes out, all of this money is allocated to the agencies, but after that, there's no accountability to us. And so we need to make sure that is happening. We've got to make sure that it's not just politics, but it's the politics of everything.
Right.
The politics of everything. And so it's a tough road, but we've got to make sure we march it. It's a heavy lift, but we got to make sure that we lift it. We are not yet done, and I promise you, unless we keep the fire going on this whole piece about equality and equity, I promise you by this time next year, we'll be out of style because the flavor of the month only lasts a month. And you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
They're only going to be interested in what we're saying right now because it's on TV, because it's on the front page. And so make sure that the flavor of the month right now goes into 22, 23, 24, 25. Make sure that it does. And finally, I'll say this. There are some people who say, I'm so tired of you talking about systemic racism. We passed a bill during our special session last summer, and it's Senate Concurrent Resolution 1. If you go to the Nevada Legislative website, you'll see it, the 32nd special session. Senate Concurrent Resolution 1 says, racism is a public health crisis.
Yes.
And every bill that I have introduced this session, every bill, I don't care what it was, every bill that I have introduced this session, I've started with that statement. And I had somebody to say to me, when are you going to stop talking about that? I said, let me tell you something. I was born black. I am black right now. Somebody told me when I was in junior high school, if I applied to the white race, they might take me. I did, and I got a 2-word answer, and one of the words was no. So I know I'm going to be black until I die. So guess what? I have lived systemic racism all of my life. I ain't going to stop talking about it until y'all stop doing it, okay? When y'all stop doing it, and I can move freely without all of these ain'ts, then I'll stop talking about it. So until then, guess what? If you're uncomfortable with me talking about systemic racism has got to go, one of us needs to leave the room, and I just took my seat.
All right now, that's what I'm saying. Told you, she can do this. Yeah, she's been doing this, getting us all excited and energized. So thank you, Senator Spearman. I know you have to leave. We would love to have you back again. We will do this in a bigger, different forum. So we appreciate your comments.
Invite me to one of your meetings. I'd love to come.
Absolutely. We'll go next to Councilwoman Gim to answer that question about, how do we dismantle this and what council is doing to add to what Cheryl Parker just said.
I can't believe I have to follow Senator Spearman. Come on now. This is not allyship. No, it is actually allyship. I'm just going to echo Senator Spearman because I'm just going to say 2 of us in this room, 1 of us has to go, and I just took my seat, is going to be our mantra. Councilwoman Parker, Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson, can we agree? We're going to be using this, right? And we all know where the origin was, but it started here at NOW.
And our flavor of the month, Councilmember Gim.
That's right.
It'll be the flavor of the year and every year thereafter.
So that was amazing. And I don't know quite how to follow that. The only thing I would say is that, similar to what Councilmember Parker said, I am blown away by how much, when I first, I haven't been in politics that long. So, when I first entered in, there is a deep commitment to seeing women grow a body of work. And I think that this council, obviously I'm going to be biased because we are only on the councils that we serve on, right, council members? So not to say that this doesn't go before us, but this council of women is dedicated to each of us developing a body of work that seeks to be truly transformative. And we all know we're in a different world. We are good at communicating what we're trying to transform here. What I'll say for myself is that there are ways of looking at gender, at race, at our identities as replicating systems of hierarchy that currently exist. Okay, so you could like exchange the players within a system and you still have a hierarchical system of oppression, of white supremacy, of exclusion, of economic oppression, a distancing and of a dividing and wedge building kind of world. Or you bring in people who really think about what it means to upend systems. And I think that on this council body, we are trying to change and transform systems. We're not exchanging players so that it looks pretty. We're actually trying to dismantle that system. One area that we've been trying to do this is, for me personally, and I know my colleagues all have their own areas, but has been around the eviction pipeline. Philadelphia is the 4th highest evicting city in the nation. For me, it has a lot to do with the fact that when we lost, housing in the subprime mortgage, people went from being homeowners to renters. We need them to become homeowners again, but in the meantime, while they're renters, they can't be thrown out each and every time. And so, we've traditionally been a high evicting city. We have a court system that backs it up. We had lack of legal counsel, and an indifference and a lack of knowledge. But what we were able to do in this past year has been nothing short, I think, of extraordinary. We took 20,000 evictions in 2019. We did less than 5,000 in 2020. We had to put in an eviction moratorium, highly controversial, but we had to stop a train. And it means you're upending things. We had to change leadership within the municipal courts. You have to provide, we opened the year with $2 million in rent assistance that we piloted ourselves. And it's now 200 million. It's not by magic. We are transforming systems. We're trying to change them. It's disruptive. At some points, it's, it can be threatening. It's not like this glory ride of optimism and joy all the way to the end. But it's one of the areas that we're working on. So
yeah, thank you. I think the last person to answer the question was Councilwoman Gilmore. If you would just quickly wrap it up, and then we're going to have closing statements so that we stay on time, or else Felicia will have my head. So.
Yes, well, I think as my colleague stated, as a body, our local council here in Philadelphia has done a huge job this year of really working on issues collectively and individually to move our city forward. And as Senator Spearman stated, it's not the flavor of the month around dismantling, structural racism and inequalities and inequities that we see in our communities. We are working hard each and every day, collectively and individually, to do just that. And for me, I'll say that one thing I heard running for office, and it was one of the best years of my life, because I had the opportunity to get out of City Hall as a staffer and to go to every community in the city of Philadelphia. And the thing I heard most often was, oh, you're running for office, that's great, but do you have a job for me? You have a connection for me to get a job? I'm trying to get a job. Can you help me with that? So that really piqued my interest in an area that I have significant work experience on, from my time working at University of Pennsylvania Health System to being a teacher at Overbrook High School, to now serving in Philadelphia City Council, and that's workforce development. and creating pathways and pipelines and opportunities for family supporting and sustaining jobs in careers we know that will be in Philadelphia based on our labor market indicators. Now, of course, that has changed significantly as a result of COVID-19, but really drilling down on how we create those opportunities, not only for young people, right, who need opportunities post-secondary, but also for adults who need opportunities to reskill, to upskill, to get other certifications, to go back to school so that they too can be eligible for some of the jobs we see here in Philadelphia. And if you look at those jobs, 80% of the most highest priority occupations we have in Philadelphia, they do not require a college degree. You just need a certification. We also worked on the very first apprenticeship guidebook that we unveiled in December of 2020. And I want to thank my colleagues for their support for the unveiling and for the labor conversations that we have each and every week with our partners, where we talk about the requirements for all of the labor unions across the city of Philadelphia so that we can help with access to those programs. So we're working on a lot of information and legislation and programs and policy around workforce development. And we'll continue to do that so we can close that gap around poverty in Philadelphia and help Philadelphians get into family supporting and sustaining careers. Nina, you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you so much. What we're going to do now is take questions from the audience. I think somebody might be collecting some of the questions. And if anybody puts them in the chat and sends them to me, I'll be happy to ask them. There's one question there already. And this can go to all three of you. You can all take a dip. We have about 5 minutes to do this. What is your position on all the apartment buildings going up in residential areas? So maybe we can start with Council Member Sherelle Parker, and then we'll go on.
As a district council person, one of the primary responsibilities that we have is monitoring land use in our district. I would argue to you that I am strongly in favor of RCOs having the ability to have a voice in land use issues in their area. I will also say to you that although it's been very few in my career, I had one that was a major one. It's always best when possible to be in line with what those residents desire to see in their communities at large, but you can't be afraid to ask the tough questions. Sometimes the council members in the community agree on whether or not a proposal can move forward, and sometimes they don't. The issue for me is that we should never allow any process and or entity to take you out of the land, the decision making as it relates to land use in your community. And I think you have to be extremely careful, particularly in communities where there is a high rate of home ownership. Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore and I, we talk about this, you know, a whole lot because of the districts that we grew up in and live up in, and we see the changes taking place now. So I want you to pay very close attention to that. I was driving down Upsall Street and I see some signs. I said, I knew something's happening. Somebody's trying to do something somewhere over there. So stay actively engaged and make sure you have a voice. And Nina, I hope before we close that we will get at least 30 seconds because I have something I want to share.
Yes, you will have 30 seconds to wrap up. So I'll just go to the next response from Councilmember Gim. If you make it short, so we have one more question and then we'll wrap up.
Sure. I'll be quick. You know, I have been a big believer that development should match, you know, the pace of our city. And one of the things that throws that up in the air is the 10-year tax abatement, which is a blanket tax abatement. It has not changed enough. It still has not changed, even though council's put forward some changes and recommendations. To me, the 10-year tax abatement upends the types of developments that are on pace with neighborhoods. It's why you'll see outsized developments that don't fit the natural growth of a community, and why gentrification is accelerating in Philadelphia at a pace that far lives our ability to match it with affordable housing needs. So I am a firm believer in rolling back the 10-year tax abatement and structuring tax subsidies that make sense for the type of developments that fit the needs of our city.
Thank you so much. And I will go to Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson for.
Sure. Well, as someone born and raised here in the city of Philadelphia, I have to agree with our majority leader around listening to and centering the voices of the community and of the registered community organizations. And we have to be authentic when we do that. You know, we can't just say we're listening. We have to really hear and implement some of the recommendations that they are suggesting. But also, I think it's important that we support our naturally occurring affordable housing market here in the city of Philadelphia. We know we have a number of longtime residents, and you know, just with the demands on our housing market, prices are just getting so unaffordable in our city. So we have to support individuals, long-term residents, and work on policies to really help them stay in their homes and in their communities.
Thank you so much. We have one last question we're taking, and that is, what are your strategies for bringing out more voters? You know, we have an election coming up on May 18th, a very critical one, which is, mostly our judicial candidates, both common pleas and statewide. And we also have our district attorney race. We have important races that can impact your life every day. So we definitely, this is an important question. What are your strategies for bringing out more voters, and what difficulties are being faced either by existing legislation or those that might be proposed similar to what's going on in other states throughout the country? So I'll start with Councilmember Gim, and then move on to Cheryl Parker, and then to Kathy.
I was just answering this. Thank you, Nina. I was just answering this in the chat, but I'll be quick here. You know, I believe in reaching young voters. Voting to me is lifelong. Young people who vote and understand the role of voting in their schools, in their lives. So certainly very supportive of high school efforts like Vote That John, that was started by a young Central High schooler named Shayla Street, whose mom is running for Commonwealth Court. Is, you know, one of the examples of how to get young people excited about voting. We absolutely need to expand mail-in voting. You know, if we can do early voting, I think that would be even better, but certainly expand mail-in voting. And that means like building out those voting centers in all of our neighborhoods so that people can come in, drop off. I think there was a lot of excitement in November of 2020 where people were asking a lot of questions, being super excited about it. And those neighborhood centers meant a lot. And then, of course, language access at the polls. We want to make sure that our immigrant communities are voting. They are diversifying our city and our state. We do not have enough language access at the polls. And so that should become a natural aspect of everyday voting. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. Particularly about access, you know, is very critical. Just because we can't speak the language doesn't mean we don't understand what is going on and what is good for us, right? And how to vote. So thanks for that. Councilmember Cheryl Parker.
Thank you. For me, and I know I'm a little old fashioned here, I am doing GOTV 365 days a year because when it is time for us to ask people to vote for a slate of candidates and or any entity we're supporting, it's not just during the primary and general election that I'm asking. So we use all of our constituent service opportunities, our block captains, and not just our committee people, but those who are what we call our block contact people. In an effort to service them, we also use that as an opportunity to encourage their civic participation. You know, while we don't profess to have the manual to do it the best, our numbers don't look too bad. So we must be doing something that's a little okay in our area. So it's for seniors, and then the methods. We use texting, but we know all of our seniors don't text. So, they call me the robocall queen. I do robocalls. I know it's old fashioned, but I do it. Cell phones and then yes, landlines, because some of my seniors still use their landlines. We also do emails, and yes, we do that old fashioned door knocking. Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson, you'll remember during the last election, there was some kind of snafu, and we had a chain on council about some efforts with the city commissioner's office. And some people were saying, well, they're just going to send out a letter to give a notice. And I wrote on that text chain, I'm not waiting for that. We're going to knock on doors because so that's just me. I'm old fashioned. I would argue every tool that you possibly have to get every constituency out, voter age 18 and up.
Yes, not old fashioned at all. That is the 1, 2, 3s of organizing. That is, if we understand that we need to meet people where they are, we need to make sure we understand some don't get on the internet. Some don't have access because guess what? We in a city where Comcast is king, we still don't have access. Not everybody has access to the internet, right? So the internet should be, and the United Nations has called that a human right. Because without that, we're not being able to do so much, right? Schools. Anyway, another conversation altogether, but I'll go to Councilwoman Richardson to finish off this question part.
Yes, well, Nina, I think it's communication, education, information, and access. And I'll have to give kudos to Councilmember Parker over there in the mighty 50th Ward. We are modeling some of that work down here in the 52nd. But it's talking to your neighbors on an everyday basis. Even today, we were out at our food pantry that we do every week since the onset of COVID-19. And we had our city commissioner, Omar Sabir, there giving out information about the upcoming election on Tuesday, May 18th. And, growing up in this game under Blondell Reynolds Brown, our former councilwoman, we've learned that there's multiple methods of communication, right? So email is not enough. Social media is not enough. Sending letters is not enough. Making phone calls. And how about this, Councilmember Parker? Outside of those robocalls, we still call our folks personally on our list. Door knocking, all of our constituent services, events, and opportunities. We have multiple touch points and multiple methods of communication to get the word out about the upcoming election, not just the week before election, but all year long. And I'll say this as a working committee person, I still knock on everybody's door in my division. They still get a letter from me, everyone in my division. My daughter knows every polling place in the 52nd Ward. So it has to be at every election opportunity, an everyday opportunity. I was walking into the house the other day and I saw 2 young men standing outside talking. And I said, hey, have you all been vaccinated? And they said, yes. I said, okay, you're registered to vote. I'm just reminding you, we'll be back down at 5100 Lebanon Bryn Mawr Suites to vote. It's that type of touch point we have to have each and every day in relationship with our neighbors to encourage them to get out to vote, because we have to vote in every single election every 6 months, not just the presidential, it's every single election. I want to give kudos to you now on the occasion of your 50th anniversary, because today, on the day of this forum, I received this postcard in the mail with your 2021 official endorsed candidates from PhillyNOW. And you talked about voting is your superpower and how you can get additional information, not only on the endorsed candidates, but you talked about the importance of the ballot questions as well, and just giving individuals additional information and access. So I want to say thank you to you, because that's the type of work we need to do to engage all Philadelphians and citizens in the voting process. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you all for all the questions, to the people who asked them, and to all the answers. We'll go now to do our finishing statements. We'll start with Council Member Sherelle Parker. We have about a minute and maybe 30 seconds each, so that we can stay on time. So thank you so much. Go right ahead, Member Parker.
Jovida and Elicia, congratulations on receiving your award. Thank you for your work and your service to the community. To all of the women who support Philadelphia Now, whatever you do and however you do it, don't allow anyone to put you in a box. Focus and pursue whatever it is your passion, and make sure you do it authentically. That's the best thing that you can do, better than anybody else in the world. Allow it to be your voice and your way, and know that you add value. The final thing I want to say is this, Nina. I was talking to a friend of mine lately, and you've heard me say this 1,001 times. When women get in the room, sometimes we are not fearful, but a little shy about letting our perspectives be known. But then we're shocked when whatever we said, somebody else implements it, or they do it, and then they give it a different title or a different, you say, well, wait a minute, I said it quietly, or I was thinking it, and then you see someone else doing it. Whatever it is that you want to do, don't allow anyone to throw shade on your shine. Stay authentic. Know that you have a right to have a voice at the table, and just be authentically you. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. With that, we will make sure our voices are loud and proud. We will go to Council Member Gim for her closing statements.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank you, Nina, to Vanessa and Jovida, and to Felicia and all the wonderful members who carry Now forward. This is, a moment when women need to come to the forefront. We have the highest ranking woman in office right now, Kamala Harris, who represents our future and our now. And I think that, more than ever, bring our daughters to the polls, bring our mamas to the polls, bring our neighbors and loved ones and our sisters to the polls. But women are going to drive this nation forward, and a united sisterhood is really what we need right now. Thank you, everybody, to Now.
Thank you, thank you. And we'll go to our youngest member of council, our council member, Catherine Gilmore Richardson.
Well, first, I have to thank you, Dr. Nina Ahmad, my fellow committee person from the 52nd Ward, and our president, Vanessa Fields. Have to give you a shout out and kudos for all the work you do over in Winfield Heights. To all the members of Philadelphia Now, of which I am a financial member and have my card. To the fellow panelists, Senator Spearman, who I enjoyed from Nevada, and to my colleagues, Council Member Parker, our leader, and Council Member Gim. Thank you both so much for being so gracious and welcoming me as a colleague in Philadelphia City Council. Must give kudos to my fellow Girls High girl, Felicia Harris Williams, for all of her work. And I'll leave us with this. When women work, women win. When women vote, women win. We have to put ourselves at the forefront of every agenda, because when women are at the table, we are no longer on the menu. Thank you so much, Philadelphia Now. We look forward to working with you. Kudos, Jovida, for all your work. I see you there in the chat. Thank you for the work you do with the Commission for Women. I worked on that legislation as a legislative aide for former council member Blondell Reynolds Brown. So to see the commission come to fruition and be a permanent part of Philadelphia city government, it truly warms my heart each and every day. I see the work that you all do. So thank you so much. And thank you, Philadelphia Now, and have a great evening.
Well, thank you. Thank you to all our panelists. I will just say that it was such a pleasure being here with all of you. I know you all, and to see all your work and to share it with our members and hopefully people who are signing in from elsewhere outside of Philadelphia. This is what solidarity looks like. And I hope people understand that when we have each other's back, we can go a long mile, right? We just want to reiterate that the main focus for both Pennsylvania Now, where I'm the interim president and a member of the Philadelphia Now with Vanessa, our goals include reproductive rights and justice, economic justice, ending violence against women, racial justice, LGBTQIA rights, and constitutional equality. This is what drives us. We all have the same broad mission. And I want to thank especially all who helped in organize this event. There was a lot of people. Vanessa, of course, did the lion's share of work, but I wanted to thank Felicia Harris, who is the principal at High Touch Enterprises, who orchestrated this whole event. You know, we try here at NOW to always invest in women, and people of color own business whenever possible. So I thank all of you for your attention and enjoy the rest of the program. And I think we're going to have Vanessa come in to lead us into the next section. Thank you all so very much.
Wow. Now, I'm just going to tell y'all right now that I'm going to steal Senator Spearman's quote. She said, 2 of us are in the room, 1 of us has to go, and I just took my seat. Didn't I tell y'all this was going to be a treat? I mean, this is incredible. So, wow, 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 powerful conversation. I want to thank again our fearless panelists, Helen Gim, Sherelle Parker, Catherine Gilmore Richardson, all from City Council, and Senator Pat Spearman. Also, again, I want to thank our incredible moderator, Nina Ahmad. And now, on to our program celebrating 50 years of PhillyNOW's advocacy work for women. And y'all going to get to hear a little bit more from Spearman.
Good evening. My name is Vanessa Fields, and I am the president of the Philadelphia chapter of NOW. Welcome to our celebration of 50 years of activism for women. I would like to thank those who joined us for our intimate conversation with women in politics, moderated by our PA chapter interim president, Nina Ahmad. Tonight, you are in for a special treat. As we continue our celebration, we will honor 4 local leaders in the women's movement: Jovida Hill, the executive director for the Philadelphia Commission for Women; Elicia Gonzales, executive director of the Women's Medical Fund; and Linda Richardson, posthumously, and her sister, Cynthia Waters Tynes, the founders of Triple Jeopardy. Triple Jeopardy was formed in the 70s and addressed the intersectionality of race, gender, and income. Tonight, this organization is being recognized for its impactful work during its existence. You will also hear from our dynamic keynote speaker, Senator Pat Spearman, who will speak about intersectionality and inclusion. PhillyNOW would not be celebrating 50 years of advocacy for women without its loyal membership and leadership. Special thanks to our Vice President, Ethelyn Baylor, Treasurer Carol Stooks Baylor, Legislative Director Noel Marconi, Education Fund Chair Nina Ahmad, Communication Chair Jeanette Jeter, PAC Treasurer Shoshana Bricklin, and our PA Now delegates Karen Bojar, and Ernie Bristow. Last but not least, a heartfelt thank you to our generous sponsors and all who bought a ticket or gave a donation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our celebration of women's advocacy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nina Ahmad, and I am the interim president of the Pennsylvania chapter of the National Organization for Women. I heartily congratulate the Philadelphia chapter of NOW on its 50th birthday. I proudly served as the president of Philadelphia NOW, myself being elected in 2013. Our slate brought in a new era for PhillyNOW by being the most multiracial and multi-generational board in our history. I'm so excited to say our current president, Vanessa Fields, has continued in that tradition of being a diverse and inclusive organization. With her background in labor union organizing, she has successfully implemented strategy to attract many new members with exciting programming and a welcoming atmosphere. During this past year, PhillyNOW's advocacy work has included amplifying issues of racial inequality in the 1st Judicial District, as articulated in the 2019 CURE report, voicing concerns about the city's problematic rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine and the disproportionate impact of the pandemic on women and communities of color, and beginning a critical conversation about reparations with our first town hall titled Moving Forward on Racial Equity. An endorsement from the Philadelphia NOW PAC is coveted by candidates, and that PAC continues to do its extensive due diligence before endorsing candidates. Philadelphia NOW is an important voice in the city, standing up against injustice, even when others might feel afraid to do so. And I hope all of you will generously support PhillyNOW to continue to be the conscience of Philadelphia. There is a new day at Pennsylvania NOW. We are undergoing leadership transition so we can continue to work tirelessly to realize a broad vision of progress for women, which is predicated on intersectionality and inclusion. We are firmly committed to support and work with PhillyNOW and all our chapters across Pennsylvania. We are continuing to chart the path for full equality for women by engaging new members and energizing our current members, and advocating boldly for issues that empower us. Despite the many gains made in the last half century, much remains to be done to ensure the promise of equal opportunity for all women. As articulated by National Organization for Women, the main focus of both PNOW and Philadelphia NOW include reproductive rights and justice, economic justice, ending violence against women, racial justice, LGBTQIA rights, and constitutional equality. Thank you to all of you, and hope you enjoy the celebration. You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can find the fighter, and I see it in you, so we can walk it out and move mountains, and we gon' walk it out and move. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, and I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the waves, and I'll rise up in spite of the ache, and I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. Mountains, and I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, I'll rise unafraid, Patrick Glennon published a story about the history of NOW in the Philadelphia Inquirer and wrote, "One of the most pivotal years in modern U.S. history, occurred half a century ago. 1968 was tumultuous. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy were assassinated, and haunting images from Vietnam cast doubt on the legitimacy of the Vietnam War as U.S. soldiers continue to perish in the conflict. Despite the bleak political environment and ever-present specter of violence, activists of all stripes continue to fight for a positive vision of society. And in Philadelphia, a chapter of the National Organization for Women began to take shape in 1968, thanks to the efforts of local feminists. In 1971, 50 years ago, the Philadelphia chapter of the National Organization for Women was finally incorporated and began laying the groundwork for the feminist movement in Philadelphia, realizing a broad vision of progress for women, predicated on intersectionality and inclusion. Our founders' mission was to form an organization dedicated to the proposition that women, first and foremost, are human beings who, like all other people in our society, must have the chance to develop their fullest human potential. Now provided an important vehicle for feminist activists during the late 1960s. Even though scores of progressive groups were active during the period, many excluded women from leadership roles and failed to integrate issues relating to women's rights into their agendas.
Wow.
Shirley Anita St. Hill Chisholm was the first African-American woman in Congress and the first woman and African-American to seek the nomination for President of the United States from one of the two major political parties. Her motto and title of her autobiography, Unbossed and Unbought, illustrates her outspoken advocacy for women and minorities during her 7 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives. Like Chisholm, Jovida Hill, too, is an outspoken advocate for women and minorities, which is why we are honored to present her with this year's Shirley Chisholm Award. Jovida Hill was appointed by Mayor Kinney in June of 2016. Prior to joining the administration, she was an award-winning writer and producer of more than 200 films and videos for the education, broadcast, and training markets. Her work has included the civil rights documentary series In the Land of Jim Crow, which documents poignant first-person accounts of the African-American struggle for justice and equality. The series, Reinventing Democracies, in the series Celebrates, which introduces children to multicultural celebrations that heralds our differences to amplify our similarities. A founding member of the African Sisterhood of Women Gather Conference, Hill currently serves on the boards of the Black Women's Health Alliance and the Logan Square Neighborhood Association. Jovida, thank you for your grassroots activism and service to the women of Philadelphia. Congratulations again on receiving the 2021 Shirley Chisholm Award, presented by the National Organization of Women Philadelphia Chapter.
Ethelyn, thank you very much for this honor tonight, and thank you to the entire board and membership of the Philly chapter of the National Organization for Women. I can't tell you what an honor it is for me, not only to receive the Shirley Chisholm Award, but also that tonight's celebration is being shared with 3 other women who have dedicated their lives and actually their careers to supporting Roe v. Wade, a woman's right to choose, and reproductive health and reproductive rights and reproductive justice. So it's an honor, and especially for me, to be sharing tonight's celebration with my dear friend and mentor, Linda Waters Richardson. Now, thank you very much for this award. I am very grateful.
Anna Pauli Murray was an American civil rights activist who became a lawyer, women's rights activist, Episcopal priest, and author. Pauli Murray joined Betty Friedan and others to form the National Organization of Women, also known as NOW, in 1966. U.S. President John F. Kennedy appointed Murray to the Presidential Commission on the Status of Women in 1961. And in 1963, she became one of the first to criticize the sexism of the civil rights movement in her speech, The Negro Woman in the Quest for Equality. Like Pauli Murray, Elicia Gonzales is not afraid to challenge the status quo. Elicia became the executive director of the Women's Medical Fund in July of 2017, where she is responsible for driving the Women's Medical Fund toward the achievement of its mission while ensuring the sustainability of its operations. Elicia is helping the Women's Medical Fund in its evolution towards centering racial and economic justice within abortion funding. She has worked in the social justice field for more than 19 years on issues ranging from reproductive justice to queer Latinx social justice. She is a licensed social worker and has master's degrees in social work and human sexuality education. Elicia has also served as adjunct professor at Widener University's Center for Human Sexuality Studies. Elicia, thank you for your grassroots activism and service to the women of Philadelphia. Congratulations again on receiving the 2021 Pauli Murray Award presented by the National Organization of Women, Philadelphia Chapter.
It is with tremendous gratitude and deep humility that I accept this award from the National Organization for Women, named after Pauli Murray. And to be transparent, I feel incredibly undeserving of an award, especially one named after Pauli Murray, who just by simply living their life were able to move mountains and create a kind of world that allowed me, a young queer Latina growing up in Denver, Colorado, to be able to go and fight for what I believe in and to be able to be my true self and to fight for the very same things that Pauli fought for in their lifetime. I really look up to the work and know that I stand on the shoulders of Pauli and others who fought tirelessly and continue to fight for the collective liberation for all folks. And I feel both humble and hopeful that we are in a time now in our society that we can fight so that everybody, regardless of their gender expression, who they love, who they have sex with, whether or not they want to have an abortion or not, are able to live freely and with our full humanity intact. And so I accept this award, but not for myself, but for the fight that is within all of us, to remember the little girls inside of us that were walking around our neighborhoods carrying swords and thinking that we were invincible and taking over the world, to the insecure older woman who hasn't put on makeup for over a year and is now at her house because of COVID restriction preventing us from doing this in person. But I do this for everybody, and I do it with humility and appreciation for all of you, for noticing and for naming the kind of work that I believe in, that I hope that we all can join forces to fight for collectively. Thank you so much.
A transformative force behind one of the city's premier annual cultural events, Ernest Ballard was also a leading local and national figure in the campaign for equal rights for women and a founder of the Philadelphia chapter of the National Organization for Women. She saved the Philadelphia Flower Show and transformed it from a historical beauty show into a spectacular international educational event. Ballard was also known as the godmother of Philadelphia feminism. Not only was she a founder of Philadelphia Now, she campaigned for the Equal Rights Amendment and abortion rights. Furthermore, Ballard is a co-founder of Women's Way, a seminal Philadelphia fundraising group that supports an array of women's organizations and causes. Like Ernesta Ballard, Linda Richardson and Cynthia Waters-Hines has worn many hats over the years. But championing women's rights remained their top priority. Founded in the early 1970s, Triple Jeopardy was a collective of 5 women determined to address issues impacting women of color. One of the group's main accomplishments was their influence on other women's organizations that lacked much of a perspective on racial justice issues. Triple Jeopardy counseled women on patients' rights and pregnancy options and advocated for those who had been denied social services. Throughout its relatively brief existence, Triple Jeopardy also worked closely with the Pennsylvania Welfare Rights Organization, led by the late state senator Roxanne Jones. In 1974, Triple Jeopardy led a demonstration to protest the unfair treatment of a woman on welfare that had recently given birth and was being mistreated. As a result, St. Joseph Hospital was pressured into forming one of the first community boards, which has had a lasting impact on hospital policy over the years. Cynthia Watertimes and her sister, Linda Richardson, made a major contribution to Philadelphia's racial justice movement and to the local's women's health movement. Sadly, Linda Richardson passed on November 2nd, 2020. The sisters' work with Triple Jeopardy in the 1970s is a compelling example of the unpaid community activism that has an economic value that must be recognized. Cynthia and Linda, thank you for your grassroots activism and the service to the women of Philadelphia. Congratulations again on receiving the 2021 Ernest Drinker Ballard Award, presented by the National Organization of Women, Philadelphia Chapter.
Good evening. I'm incredibly honored to receive the Ernest Drinker Ballard Award as one of the members of Philadelphia Triple Jeopardy, and thrilled that it comes from Philadelphia's National Organization for Women. Over 47 years ago, Philadelphia Triple Jeopardy was formed by a scrappy group of 5 young African-American women. We took our name from a newspaper published in 1971 by the Third World Women's Alliance, one of the earliest groups advocating for an intersectional approach to women's oppression. Triple Jeopardy stood on the front lines with our allies at protests and demonstrations in Philadelphia, Harrisburg, and Washington, D.C., demanding changes in policies regarding the war in Southeast Asia and liberation movements in Southern Africa. We marched for reproductive rights, an end to sterilization abuse, welfare rights, and justice for all women of all classes and all races. Sadly, as we all know, the fight is far from over. Old threats persist and new ones arise every day. To our local sister groups of that time, Welfare Rights Organization, Women Organized Against Rape, Women's Health Concerns Committee, and Choice, to name a few, and our brothers-led organizations, the Black United Liberation Front, Yellow Seeds, Community Assistance for Prisoners, and the Young Lords. I applaud you for adding us to the table and becoming our allies. And to a few of the many women who inspired us then and now, Fran Beal, Shirley Chisholm, Barbara Smith, Helen Rodriguez Trias, Bell Hooks, Angela Davis, and Fannie Lou Hamer, I honor you. I want to recognize 3 other talented and tenacious members of our cadre, Murtis Rubin, Emma Canty, and Rosalind Redding, in addition to our brilliant, beautiful, guiding force, my sister Linda. I feel her presence and that of my mother, Bertha Waters, who lived 95 years, a humanist, feminist, and champion for social justice. Both left a significant legacy. Sitting next to me is that legacy.
I want to also thank the National Organization for Women. My mother's legacy was regarding systemic issues and facing the issues that were impacting our community in systemic ways. And 50 years ago, it would not have been imagined that the Pennsylvania Legislative Black Caucus would be headed by an African-American woman and Representative Donna Ballard, who's taking on systemic racism in policies that are looking at racial justice and health equity, and looking at ways to be able to codify those things in state law. My mother's legacy lives on in the women that she supported. Thank you very much for this award. We're proud of her, we're proud of my Aunt Cynthia, and we're proud of all the women who's worked towards this goal. Thank you.
I am a light. I am a I am light, I am light. I am light, I am light. I'm not the things my family did or any other voices in my head. I'm not the pieces of the brokenness inside. I am light. I am light. I am light. I am light. I am light, I am light, yeah. I am light, I am light. I'm not the color of my eyes. I am not the skin on the outside. I am not my age. I am not my race. My soul inside is all light. All light. Oh, light is all light. I am light, I am light. I'm not the mistakes that I have made or any other things that cause me pain. I am not the pieces of the dream I left behind. I am light. 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 I am not the color of my eyes. I am not the skin on the outside. I am not my age. I am not my race. My soul inside is all light. Ooh. I am light, I am light. I am light, I am light. I am divinity defined. I am the God on the inside. I am a star, a piece of it all. I am light.
Persistence, courage, and initiative. Dr. Patricia Spearman embodies that of many struggles surpassed to obtain the American dream. From being one of the first African-American girls to integrate her school system, to being the first openly LGBTQ+ member of the Nevada State Senate, she understands that her story is made by taking a step forward regardless of all the battles that want to push you back. Senator Spearman was first elected in November 2012 to the Nevada Senate, becoming the first openly lesbian member of the Nevada Legislature. Before being elected senator, Spearman served in the United States Army for 29 years, reaching the rank of lieutenant colonel, was a pastor, and held several public service positions. The National Organization of Women, Philadelphia chapter, is both excited and grateful to have Senator Pat Spearman join us this evening to deliver the keynote address as we celebrate 50 years of grassroots activism. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Dr. Pat Spearman.
Well, hello there, PhillyNOW. First of all, let me say congratulations. I see that you are celebrating 50 years of service, 50 years of service in the Philadelphia area. This is awesome. And I'm looking at the honorees. Congratulations to all of the 2021 honorees. Looking at your accomplishments, I know that it's well-deserved, and I am indeed honored and humbled to be asked just to say a few words. So thank you for this honor, and thank you for the opportunity to share in this anniversary celebration. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am Senator Pat Spearman. I serve Senate District 1, which is most of North Las Vegas here in Nevada. And North Las Vegas is a real city. It's not the north part of Las Vegas. So it's the city of North Las Vegas. I have been serving since 2012, and that's when I was elected. I have served in on various committees as chair, legislative operations and elections, commerce and labor, which is where I am now. I've been on growth and infrastructure, a number of areas that I've served. And, that's one of the things that I would say anyone who's looking at going into politics, make sure that you try to get a wide array of opportunities in terms of serving on committees. It's a wealth of knowledge that you can gain on committees that you probably wouldn't gain anyplace else. So been serving here since 2012. The thing about politics is it's one of those things that kind of drew me. But at the same time, if you've been in politics for a while, you know that it's a love-hate relationship. There are a lot of things that you like about it. What I don't like about it, I don't like the games sometimes that you have to play or that people play. I was drawn to politics because I saw it, especially this office. I saw it as an opportunity to really continue serving people. There's so many people out there who, when they go to the ballot box, and they either check your name off or push the button for your name or whatever, they are expecting us to do something. And they are not expecting us to get to wherever it is, Carson City, which is our state headquarters, or Washington, or wherever. They're expecting us to get something done. So I really got involved in politics because I wanted to get something done for people. My first foray into politics was really in Texas while I was still in the military. And I was talking a lot about what the school system was and was not doing, and how some people, most communities of color, were not being served correctly, and about how we treat our teachers. I don't know what this whole thing is about vilifying teachers and vilifying public education, and I would say that all the time. And so there was a seat that was going to be vacated by a long-serving member, and I got the call and said, at the time I was also pastoring the church, and they said, Pastor Spearman, it's time to put your money where your mouth is. And I'm like, what are you talking about? They told me there's a seat available and said, you talk so much about it. So if you run and get elected, then you can do something about it. And I ran, I threw my hat in the ring, and it was me, and I think it was 7 other people. And they had this little cute name. They always do this to women. It was Snow White and the 7 dwarfs. They never do that to men. They never do that to men. They always do something like that to women. Long story short, it really didn't matter what they called me. It only really mattered what I answered to, and I answered to, you are the winner. I won that seat in 1990 and served for a brief period of time as secretary, and then was elected to be president of the school board. While in that position, one of the things that I kept saying needed to happen, I kept saying we've got to raise teachers' salaries. So we were able to raise teachers' salaries. We were also able to put an emphasis on recruiting more teachers of color and diversifying the teacher pool, because we had, in San Marcos, there were mostly Black and brown communities, mostly Black and brown children, students in schools, but we did not have that reflected in our teacher pool. So we were able to do that. We were also able to pass a bond issue that was, I think it was like the 4th time that it was brought up. And before it failed miserably. And one of the things that I said as we began the campaign to get this done was, people were saying, well, I don't have any kids in school, so I don't think that, I should have to pay taxes to for this bond issue. And I basically said to people, I'm doing it. I'm going to vote for it because it's the right thing to do. But even if you don't want to do something that is altruistic, if you want to be mercenary or selfish about it, you ought to want better schools, because at some point in time, when you retire and you are waiting for your retirement check, you want to make sure that people who are cutting that check know the difference between $7.49 and $749. And so we were able to get that bond issue passed, able to do a number of other things. And I really liked it. It's tiring and sometimes it gets on your nerves, but I really liked it because we were able to get some things done, not just for the students, but we were also able to form a partnership with this little company that a lot of people didn't really know a whole lot about in Cupertino, California. The company was Apple, and we partnered with them to develop a distance learning classroom, which allowed our juniors and seniors to take courses from the university without ever leaving campus. So that was one of the things that got me involved in politics in Texas. Here, it was really a matter of looking at what was happening in the community in which I live. I'd retired from the military, was still pastoring a church. And I kept seeing people in my neighborhood. I kept seeing houses in my neighborhood, being foreclosed on. I kept looking around and I would see more and more people who were out of jobs. And it bothered me because these are hardworking people. And what bothered me the most, though, is the castigations that they were giving to people who were losing their homes. I heard things like, well, people shouldn't buy homes that they can't afford. And I would say, yelling at the TV, how we do sometimes. I'm yelling at the TV. They could afford it when they bought it. They got laid off or they're downsized or whatever. And so running this time around in 2012, it was really about wanting to do something that would help the community that looked like it was on a precipitous dive. So I ran and I won and have been able to do a number of things. One of the things that I'm really proud of, and that is the fact that I was able to carry the Equal Rights Amendment here in Nevada, and with the help of so many people. People remember my name, but there are a number of other people whose names I don't know and whose names you may not know. But trust me, they are there in history. They kept this going. They kept the fire burning to try to get it ratified in the last 3-state strategy. And God blessed me to be able to do that. With the help of God, we got it done in 2017, and it never, I think it's like a 45-year dormancy. And once Nevada did it, Illinois said, we can do it too. And when Illinois did it, Virginia said, we can do it too. And so now we do have the requisite 28 states, but for some reason it's still kind of hung up. But anyway, I was glad to do that. The other thing that I was glad to do, and that was to pass an equal pay bill. And now in Nevada, it is illegal to pay someone differently based upon their gender. And we have some very stiff penalties for that. And we also have some clarifying language, because a lot of times people say, well, it wasn't a matter of gender. They've got these other little caveats in there that make it seem like there were differences in what their responsibilities were. So it's illegal in Nevada to pay someone differently. This session, I am hell-bent on tackling systemic racism. It is one of those things that if we don't have the courageous conversations right now, we will never move beyond that. And we must move beyond that because we are not yet a perfect union. It is systemic racism that one of the things that's keeping us from becoming that. And so everything that I'm working on this time around has to do with dismantling systemic racism. I'm looking at it from the standpoint of healthcare. We all know that women and members of the BIPOC communities have been more severely affected by COVID-19. I still carry some of the vestiges of my bout with COVID back in December. So I'm not in ICU. I'm not all the way back to my full self. Thank God I am on the road to recovery. So healthcare. The other thing that I'm looking at is how we are treated in the healthcare system, because so many times when women present themselves to a a medical person, a doctor, so many times we know what's going on in our bodies and we know what that feels like. But many times we are either ignored or discounted. And I go back to think about Dr. Susan Moore, I believe that's her name, Dr. Susan Moore, who passed away from complications of COVID, a licensed medical doctor, and continued to told the people there in the hospital in Indiana, this is what's wrong, and these are the things that probably need to happen. And she said, I think in one of her final videos, she said, they treated me like I was a drug dealer. And we know that to be true. And so working on bills that will make sure that there is not just equality, but equity in the healthcare space. Also looking at ways that we might be able to expand economic opportunities for people who have typically been left behind and left out. The way that I'm trying to do that mostly is through renewable energy and through economic development, through technology and other innovations. One of the things that continues to happen is women and BIPOC communities, most of the time we get involved after something, an industry has taken off, and after when people are saying, oh, this is the latest rage, and so we apply for employment there. I want to make sure that this time around, we're not applying for employment, but we are the ones that are sending notices out that we're ready to hire someone. And so trying to make sure that we are doing economic development for others. Let's see here. Someone asked us, what has that experience been like? I jokingly said earlier to someone, I could tell you what that is, but I don't curse. But let me see if I can tell you. There are good days, and then there are days when I say, oh my God, what in the world am I doing? And I just feel like throwing up my hands and saying I'm done with it. But then I stop and I think about the people who don't have a voice. I think about the people who are laboring under some very tough situations, especially during COVID. I think about the people now. I think about the people who have been laid off of their jobs. I think about the people whose hours have been reduced. I think about the people who are trying to hang on to their homes. I think about the people who are panicking now because most of the moratoriums, the eviction moratoriums, will end at the end of this month. So the experience is one of profound joy and excitement, but at the same time, sometimes it can be one that makes you just wonder, why am I doing this? Or sometimes the frustration is, how come you can't understand this? You know, as you're trying to convince colleagues or trying to make your case to colleagues that a certain piece of legislation needs to pass. It's like, can't you see this? Don't you know? Don't you understand? I had a bill that I testified on today, and the bill would make sure that collections company and home HOAs, homeowners associations, to number one, they could not increase the HOA fees or HOA dues until January 2022. The other thing was to put a moratorium on home foreclosures. And you would not believe how many people thought that that was just so onerous. Well, you know, homeowners, HOAs have budgets that they have to meet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, and so do the people that we're trying to protect right now. And it was almost as though my words were hitting a brick wall, because I continue to have people say, well, if you take that out, then we can support it. No, we're going to leave that in, because there are a lot of people who need this this legislation just to move forward. And let me say something about this, because the theme really is this year is talking about the intersection of gender, race, and I'm going to add gender presentation and gender identity. You know, as you look at how systemic racism has thrived, not just in this country, but in the world. But if you look at how it has thrived, it is at the intersection of race or ethnicity, gender, and gender identification. So I am a Black woman That's already in the game of baseball, that would already be 2 strikes against me. I happen to be glad that I am who I am, and I happen to be glad that I'm Black, happen to be glad that I am a woman. But then you throw in there the fact that I'm also a member of the LGBTQ community. Now, how in the world are you going to survive? How are you going to be able to succeed? Well, let me tell you how you do that. You own your own truth and not be embarrassed. Don't let anyone embarrass you about who you are and how God made you. When you look at the intersection of those 3 things, I think that's one of the things that has made me an effective legislator, because I know what it feels like to be discriminated against because I'm a woman. I know what it feels like to show up and women have never been there before. I know what it feels like to show up and people are trying to keep Blacks or African Americans out. I know what it feels like when people have homophobic attitudes. I know what all of that feels like. And I often say to people, I've been fighting these fights all of my life. And so now I'm in a place where I can fight them with the leverage of being an elected official. The experience itself is one that is not for the faint of heart. But I would also say this: if you are thinking about going into politics, please think long and hard about it. And if you have a desire to help people, please join the ranks of the elected officials. And it doesn't have to necessarily be at the state level, it doesn't have to be at the federal level. You might want to start at the municipal level. The municipal level needs people who are leaders and who are unafraid to speak truth to power. I often say to people that we keep talking about how we want the president to deal with police reform. But you know what? Police reform really starts at the municipal level, because it is the mayor and the city council members who seek out the police chief and hire him or her, and they are the ones that approve the personnel policy. So if you really want to make a difference, then look at municipal government. Then you can look at county government or state government. Wherever your talents might take you, do not be afraid to look at that, and then do not be afraid to go for it. And people will tell you you can't do it. People will tell you that you can't make it. People will try to talk you out of it in various and sundry other ways. Some people might even try to, there were some people who told me, you better not run. And I'm like, what? What did you say? You better not run. What do you mean I better not run? Well, I just don't think, if you decide to run, then there'll probably be some consequences. People who know me know that telling me that I can't do something when I know that I can, and I know that I won't, on a pit bull sick 'em. And so when people were, quote, trying to threaten me out of running, I simply leaned in and did everything that I could do to make sure that I won. There were people who didn't believe that I was going to win because I was running against a 15-year incumbent. There were people who told me that they weren't going to give me money because they didn't think I was going to win. Well, here I am. And the margin of victory was 63% for us and 37% for the other team. If you are looking at running for office, figure out where your talents are. Figure out where your skill set is. And then find the passion and the fire in your belly. Let that lead you forward into the foray. Maybe you have a primary. Win the primary and then go into the general election. And then once you are elected, remember why you ran. Remember why you ran. And if you're running for all of the right reasons, when you feel like you've been dejected, when you feel like you've been rejected, if you ran for all of the right reasons, you will be able to rekindle that fire in your belly, and you'll be able to stand up and say, this is why I'm here. These are the people that I'm fighting for. And as long as my voice is being heard, then the voices of those who we think are voiceless, those voices I will bring to the table, and I will make sure that people hear them, people understand their plight, and we do something to make their lives better. So the advice that I would give you if you're thinking about running for politics or running for office and getting involved in politics, I would say to you, run, run, run. It won't be easy, but it'll be worth it. Sometimes you may have to cry, but it'll be worth it. There will be times when you even have to walk alone because you're carrying legislation that is politically unpopular. Keep going. Keep going. Remember why you ran. And remember the people for whom are depending on you to be their voice. They are depending on you to make sure their plight is heard and considered. They are depending on you because they will not sit in the chair that you sit in or be in the place that you're in as an elected official. But they're depending on you. They're depending on you. So PhillyNOW, thank you for the opportunity to come and share this with you. I have really enjoyed this time. I hope that I haven't gone over. It's always a pleasure for me to talk to, especially women who are in the struggle for equality and equity. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I hope that there will be another time when we are not under COVID restrictions and we can all gather together. Would love to see you all in person. So thank you so much. Take care. God bless you. Run, run, run.
I hope you enjoyed our celebration of 50 years of activism for women. Congratulations again to each of our honorees, and thank you, Senator Pat Spearman, for such an inspiring keynote address. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors who made this year's event possible. Thank you again to all of our PhillyNOW members and executive board who are on the ground doing the real work day in and day out. Thank you to SCH Entertainment for booking our lovely student performers, dancer Simone Gadlin and singer Soleil Brown Alexander. And a special thank you to 777 Media for our video production, and High Touch Enterprises, Felicia Harris Williams, who is this year's event producer. Please visit our website for more information about PhillyNOW and to join our organization. Don't forget the May primary is on Tuesday, May 18th. All elections are important. Whether you vote in person or by mail, vote. Take care, stay safe, and have a great evening.